Shut up, fool!
Oh man. Myron, did you check my recording levels? He didn't. 88%, and it's going to drop because Windows 10 sucks. I hate Windows 10. Windows 7 Professional. Windows 7 Professional, best operating system that Microsoft has made. Windows 7. Was it XP? Windows XP? That was pretty good too. Windows 95. I was a beta tester. You kids nowadays, you don't know. You don't know how far we've progressed, where we've come from. I worked on Lotus, the very, very first version of Lotus spreadsheets. And I was fascinated how you could just copy and drag functions. I remember a day when there was no cell phones. I remember the day the first calculator watch came out. People between ages of, I'd say, late 40s to late 50s, I think they've experienced the most change in life. Is this right? The most change in life ever? Because that's the internet age. We're going from no internet to internet. It's amazing. Well, how did this come up? Forest for the Trees, 1,000 Pine Points. Cindy Averitt, 500 Pine Points. Hooray! Paul Schlechter, 250 Pine Points to you. And Humble Thinker, 4th again? What a loser. Oh my goodness. You want to recount? No recounts. Trust the system. Yeah, we don't want to doubt it. There's a lot of good stuff in here. I just caught wind of this. This was streamed 20 hours ago, so yesterday sometime. And Mike talks about his testimony. He talks about abortion. And it got my dopamine up. Thank you, Mike Winger. I love dopamine. Thank the Lord for dopamine.
So I have this bumper sticker on my car that triggers people. It triggers people a lot. Let me show it to you guys. I don't mean it to trigger people. That's not the goal at all. That's not my intention. But the logic is simple. It's meant to be a thought-provoking bumper sticker, something that makes somebody say, what does former embryo on board mean? I mean, that's what the bumper sticker says as you see it on screen before you. The logic of the sticker is simple. It's that, pro-choicers, people who tend to say abortion's okay, they really have two main things that they do, right? They want to move away from the idea that the thing inside the womb is like a living human being with value, and they want to move away from the idea that the behavior you're enacting, the abortion itself, is the killing of that thing. And so they'll talk about things like a clump of cells. The baby's a clump of cells, or it's a pregnancy. We're just terminating a pregnancy, or a parasite. I've heard this, that the babies are likened to parasites to justify killing them.
Yeah, there's just so many great questions one can ask on this issue. When an embryo is killed, Christians, what do you envision that embryo being in heaven? Still an embryo? An adult? What this embryo would have become? Like, really seriously think about this, Christians. If you believe embryos are babies, people, persons, souls-filled things filled with soul, Seriously, what do you imagine an embryo in heaven being like, looking like? Does it get a resurrected body?
But the bumper sticker is just to say this, like, you used to be an embryo. Like, you didn't come from an embryo. Like, you were an embryo. Like, I was an embryo. That's all I'm saying. Hey, guys, I used to be an embryo. The logic isn't even spelled out beyond that. But, man, it triggers people. I have people that...
I don't understand why it triggers people. I guess, yeah, it doesn't trigger me.
That chew me out, that honk, that yell at me. I mean, I live in California. Right? So I have people who get pretty upset with me about this stuff. I once had a lady follow me from where I parked my car into a school where I was speaking. She thought I worked for the school, and she wanted to speak to the principal and chew him out.
Oh, and I apologize for not shaving. My excuse is I'm married, and I already get coitus.
And she, in front of me, chewed out the principal for allowing me to work at the school. I was like, lady, I don't work at the school. But she, like, it was like she had blinders on. She couldn't hear anybody. And so, yeah, that happens. Well, in this case, somebody left a note on my car. Okay, a passive-aggressive note on my car. I'm going to read it to you in full right now, and then I want to analyze it with you. Right. The goal here is to understand the logic and the thinking that goes behind pro-choice stuff. Not because, right, here's the note, not because...
Here's another question that just popped in my head. If it were true, Mike Winger and other Christian parents, or Mike Winger is not a parent, if it were true that I led your child away from Christianity, and if it were true that when they died, they went to hell, and if it were true that I was like 95% responsible for that, no one's 100% responsible, but let's say that were all true. And if it were true that if they would not have come in contact with me, your daughter, your son, that they would be a Christian today, if all that were true, do you wish I was aborted as an embryo? Tell the truth. Your daughter is going to go to hell for eternity because of me. Do you wish I had never been born? Do you wish I would have been aborted? Yes or no? Tell the truth.
I want to make fun of it, not because I want to ridicule people, but because I think that there are people who are part of horrible moral atrocities in the past, right? Like, say, the Holocaust, say chattel slavery, say the massacres that we have. We've had so many horrible massacres in the past 100 years in the world, and people were part of it, and they thought it was fine at the time. It was in hindsight they looked back and saw it was bad. But the lesson we've missed from this, from all these atrocities, is that we are committing some now, specifically in relation to the most weak victims of all of...
Yeah, Darkin says if they were honest, they'd say yes. I can't see how you can not be pro-abortion in that one case of your own child or loved one. Like Mike Winger believes in eternal conscious torment. He does. He believes in that version of hell, unless he very recently changed his mind. And if I truly were the cause of someone's eternal conscious torment, how you would be evil to say, no, I would have been okay if you were not aborted. No, you go ahead and live and take my children away from eternal life. Like, in your worldview, if this is true, you're an evil person, I think, for wanting your child to go to hell. Because all you have to do, if you had a button that said, okay, Doug is aborted as an embryo, press the button. And that, therefore, guarantees my child goes to heaven because they accepted Jesus Christ as their Lord and personal Savior, confessed with their mouth, took up their cross and walked daily. You know, all the other things you need to be saved. That was a given. God foreknew it, but he also foreknew that I would take it away from them. Even though it says in the Gospel of John, no one can take a person out of the Father's hands except for themselves and maybe some other people. Calvinism.
Of society, babies. And we feel fine about it. And it's because of this logic right here. This logic right here is the stuff, the horrific thinking that causes things like genocides. And it's going on right now in our midst. It's the greatest moral issue in our lives today, apart from the gospel of Jesus Christ itself.
And for those of you who are new here and Christian, be careful not to judge me because, no, I think you can judge me, but be careful. Because you don't know where I stand on abortion yet. Because I haven't said. I've said in the past, but if you're new here, you hadn't heard.
Is the issue of abortion. More so than anything about vaccines or plagues, viruses, anything about political issues other than this one. I mean, this is definitely a political issue. It has become political. But this issue matters. So we're going to analyze the logic here thoughtfully. Here is the note.
Is it yeah, I guess it is political. But it's There's a lot of Democrats who are pro-life, right? And there's at least some Republicans that are pro-choice.
This is what it says. Hello, former embryo.
Paul Schlechter says, did he call fetuses babies? I've been reading the chat, but you know what? I'm okay with that. It's maybe because it has a nice shock factor. Because it doesn't make a dent for me. But I know it shocks people. You are for killing babies? Yeah, sometimes. Yeah, let that baby die. And God's for killing babies sometimes too. We'll get into that.
It is wonderful that you were born into a world whereby a parent, and they're going to offer 3 things here. 1, wanted you and loved you. 2, could financially support you. 3, didn't bring you into an abusive nor neglected environment so that you would face and then you flip the note over, life of suffering or even death. If these 3 things cannot be in place, then there is nothing. Listen to this logic. This is horrific. This is like Hitler on my windshield.
Oh, 4 minutes. Hitler's been mentioned.
I'm not exaggerating. If these things cannot be in place, there is nothing that is beautiful nor a blessing about this poor victim coming into this world. Please take a reality check needed by all anti-choice persons. And then there is the smiley face at the bottom of the note, the bottom right hand of the note. The smiley face, which to me is the most offensive part. But we're going to dig through this and understand it thoughtfully and logically and rationally.
Yeah. This is such an emotionally charged topic for Mike, as we will see. I find it really hard for him to think rationally and logically about this topic if his gut emotional response is to be offended by a happy face at the bottom. But we'll see.
Just like every pro-choice person does not. I mean that genuinely. Pro-choice people, you are terribly irrational, highly emotional, and you are ignoring the most important central issues that you are taking a stance on. You're taking a stance on a moral issue, but you're not even thinking.
Mike Winger reminds me of those Muslims that I've talked to on Thought Adventure Podcast and Hamza's Den. Like, this is very similar to how they talk. You're irrational. You're emotional if you believe X.
Or willing to talk in most cases about the problem at hand. You're not even willing to use the right words. We're ending a pregnancy, right? Do you really not realize you're just pretending to not do the thing you're really doing? You're killing a human. Let's dig into...
No, we're killing babies. It's not always wrong to kill a baby, as we'll find out soon.
Here's the reasons why, and we're going to apply it to my life first. Okay, I'm going to tell you guys a couple things about my life that I don't normally tell. By the way, if you don't know me, my name is Mike Winger. I do this stuff online. I help you learn how to think biblically about everything. I don't want nothing from you except to just stimulate your thoughts, hopefully stimulate your faith in Christ, give you better glasses for understanding the biblical worldview and being able to apply and understand Scripture in your life. And this is one area where our culture is upside down, inside out, backwards. We're calling evil good and good evil and all that. And we're going to apply this to my life. She assumed a lot. I'm assuming it's a girl. I don't know. It could be a guy. I don't actually care if it was a girl or a guy who wrote the note. Let's just say it was a girl. Because I don't know. For some reason, the handwriting made me think it was a girl. Anyway, we'll see. But the 3 things we're going to apply to my life. I normally don't tell a lot of stuff about my life.
Normally, yeah. He's actually shared a lot about his life on my channel 2 or 3 years ago. And he's consistent. He tells the same story here, which is very interesting. For those of you who are not new here, I've been preaching for many years that the reason why theists are theists is hope, meaning, purpose.
My past growing up. And this is not because I'm embarrassed about things. It's because...
Not minimal facts. Not the Kalam cosmological argument.
I want to protect some family members who I don't want to trash them. So I'm going to share a few things. I'm going to try to be careful about how much I share, and I'm not going to share all this stuff. There's a lot more, but I'll share a couple things because I want to be able to apply it to this note. So let's look at the first thing. The first thing that she said was that I was born into a world whereby I was wanted, right? A parent wanted me and loved me. Okay, that's very important, and this is a reason to kill somebody if this isn't in place. Now, the first thing we'll say is that this means your value. This is where I want a pro-choicer to think through their logic. This means that your value, if you affirm this note, your value is based upon how much your parents want and love you. Now we just slow.
Well, if your parents don't want or love you, then the value that they place on you is lower. That's just science, right? From their perspective, you are not of high value to them if they truly don't want you, they truly don't care about you. And that is sadly the case for many children born on planet Earth. The parents don't care. Do we have anybody in the live stream chat who might be willing to come on after I'm done reviewing this video who are foster parents? I'm going to resonate with Christians listening right now by bringing a foster parent on, if there is one listening. And I tell you, foster parents can tell you horror stories about just how much parents do not care and make unwise decisions impacting the life of the child, including like taking drugs through pregnancy and their child is born with malformities. I mean, it's horrendous. Would you press the button to prevent that?
Your role just a second and think of how horrific this is. For this to be true, my value, the worthiness of my life, my worth to live is based upon a parent loving me and wanting me. How many people have become valueless now? How many people were not loved or wanted by a parent? And we're looking at them now with this logic, this insane, horrific, genocidal logic, and saying, your life's not worth it. It would have been nicer to kill you. It would have been a mercy, a kindness to you to kill you.
Yeah, well, there are definitely people who, even if the child is unwanted, can adopt, and they want that child. There's many, many couples on planet Earth who want kids and can't do it on their own. And the problem in the United States, this is a bit of a side. Well, no, it's on topic. Like I was 95% infertile. My wife was up there too because of all the heavy metals in the research lab. I honestly think that's it. So both our kids are test tube babies. So we looked into adoption. And I tell you, adoption was just as expensive and maybe more work than in vitro fertilization. Christians, if you want to lower abortions in the United States, let's make adoption free. How do we do that? I can't do that. I'm a capitalist. It costs money. Or maybe some type of, fund that very wealthy people can contribute to. Yeah, there's a lot of wealthy. Hobby Lobby. Make a fund that, so you pay for adoptions for other people. Maybe it already exists and I'm not aware of it. But yeah, I just remember adoption's very expensive and takes a lot of time. Unless you're mixed. We were told, my wife and I are interracial. And we were told we could have the pick of the litter. Pick me. Because of that, there's a lot of mixed kids that needed to be adopted. Thank you for the donation, Michael. Michael, would people in hell be in heaven had they been aborted? What do you think Mike would say as a non-Calvinist? Michael, I was going to go there, and you're pushing my buttons to get me accelerated. But yeah, let's talk about that now. Here's the issue. The issue is, for a lot of Christians, something is either wrong or right. It's either sin or not sin, right? I'm not straw manning here. In God's eyes, he looks down and he sees an action and he either says that's sin or not sin. There's no gray area. But this is the problem, because the problem is there is gray areas. And there is this thing called wrong and less wrong, right and more right. Now, for Christians like Mike Winger, this is a very difficult thing to grasp unless you can help them. Oh, that sounds condescending, right? See it. And I'm trying to think of a good example of wrong versus less wrong. Like, well, let's go back to my question I asked earlier. If it were true that I would lead your loved one to hell, if you believe in hell, it would be wrong to abort me. Many Christians would still say. But would it be less wrong? because I was a bad person for leading your loved one to hell? Yes, it would be wrong to kill Hitler. Mike Winger brought up Hitler earlier. Yes, it would be wrong to abort Hitler. But really, is it that wrong? Now that, if we knew that he would kill 6 million Jews or whatever the number is and start World War II, yeah, it's wrong to abort Hitler, but really, that's not that bad if you consider the suffering that's been alleviated from that embryo's death. Would you press that button to kill Hitler?
Yeah. So a lot of people become valueless. Now, it presumes the value of human life changes if a parent doesn't love you. Now, if you want to think biblically, if you want to be a Christian, which I do, then you're going to have to understand that our value doesn't come from any parent at all. Parents don't provide value. Listen to this. Genesis 1:27, Scripture says, God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. This is...
Yeah, actually, there are intersex people. This one verse, if you're a biblical literist and you believe everything in the Bible is true and there's no errors, there's not much interpretation fudge room here. Male and female, he created them. But we know there's something like, I don't know what the number is, 0.3% of the planet are intersex. Maybe it's lower than that. They're both male and female, or neither male and female. If you truly believe what I just said, that there's intersex people where their sex cannot be determined because they're either both or neither, however you want to put it, this verse is wrong. Your Bible's wrong. There's one error in it right here. Oh, you can't even see it. I apologize. But your Bible's wrong. Now, to the other point, so God created man in his image, own image. In the image of God, he created him. So abortion doctors, if they're created in the image of God, maybe they're doing what they're doing because they're created in the image of God. Maybe they're aborting because God's a bit of an abortionist himself. Oh, that hurts. If humans are so evil and depraved, yet created in the image of God, does that mean God's a little bit evil and depraved? No, of course not, right? But when humans do good things and they exercise their free will in a good way, then you see the image of God in them. But when they do bad things, no, of course, it's not because they're in the image of God.
Human value as like the highest value of all of created things that are on the earth. There's nothing else that compares to humans. We have the highest value above plants, above animals. Not that animals don't have value. They have value. Like, here's my cat. Right? There she is. Does she not have value? Oh, the kitty.
Okay, so Mike's, I like this, what Mike is saying right now. This is excellent. He's saying that humans have value, animals have value, but animals don't have as much value as humans. And I would generally agree with him. But now here's an uncomfortable question for Mike and Christians like Mike. Imagine the worst serial killer in the world. Imagine the worst pedophile in the world. Imagine a serial killer who's also a pedophile. How's that? And we have a choice, Mike. We can either kill the serial killer pedophile, we just crush him, or we crush your cat. Who has more value to society? Who has more value to God? Oh, uncomfortable, right? Your cat? Oh, look how cute and soft. I bet you if you pet that cat, its fur is so soft. Wouldn't you say, Mike, that your cat has more value than the pedophile, serial rapist, serial killer? See, this is a tough question for Christians to answer. And thank you for the donation. Myth Vision, check him out. He has a channel that does similar things to what I do, except way more in depth with professionals. He takes on guests and they actually talk to him. And he travels to and fro on his private jet talking to PhDs about Christianity and theism. You're my favorite For my favorite skeptic YouTube channel, the Christian Undertaker Doug. Well, yeah, the Undertaker. That reminds me of wrestling days. You know, the Undertaker. Is he still alive? Yeah, that big long trench coat. But yeah, thank you for the generous donation. I appreciate it.
Of course she does. But she doesn't have value like me or like you. We're made in the image of God. That makes us a whole different kind of...
Yeah, I think Christians really struggle with that question I just asked. There are many pets that even non-pet owners, like if my neighbor had a pet dog that was obedient and helped, say it was a service dog, helped a blind person across the street. How many Christians have the backbone to say that dog has more value than a serial killer? How many Christians would say that that serial killer has more value than the service dog? Now you can say it, but nah, come on, really? Really? You don't really believe that, do you? This is the dirty little secret that, it's not really a secret. But it's sad in a way, but it's true. Our value is determined by what we do, how we behave. It's not, this is going to peeve off a lot of people. It's not inherently on who we are, because who we are is actually what we do, how we behave, how we interact. You can think of these moral thought experiments like the one with the boat, right? You got a boat and the boat's sinking. It's a rowboat, let's say. And you got 10 people on there. And so in order to save some lives, you got to throw some lives overboard. Who are you going to throw? Are you going to start with the medical doctor who could come in handy if someone gets scurvy or sick in the boat? Or are you going to overthrow the guy in the boat who's feeling everybody up and just, wants to rape? Who are you going to throw over first? What we throw over and what we keep is a sign of what we value. Am I wrong? I don't think so.
Thing. Genesis also elaborates on this a little bit to help us understand our human value in Genesis 9:6. This is...
Oh, good question, Reed. Should eBay allow orphans to be auctioned off for adoption? Ooh. Good question. Now, I lean capitalistic, so this is a tough question for me. Well, they would need to be health checked, and because you don't want to buy a kid and then, sunk costs like a money pit. Okay, I admit I crossed the line there. Okay, if you click off, you have my blessing.
A little bit for those who haven't heard it before. But God says that whoever sheds the blood of a man, by man his blood will be shed. And man here is meant to mean mankind, male, female. For God made man in his own image. The idea here is that there's an accounting or a judicial requirement that governmentally, and I have a video on this, why I'm pro death penalty, but I'm not pro choice. Right? I think that death penalty for murderers, yes, actual murderers, guilty, truly guilty murderers, that's appropriate and right. Whereas death penalty for children because a parent doesn't care about them.
What's interesting about this is his rationale for being pro death penalty but not pro abortion is based on what the people do. Embryos haven't, or fetuses, no, let's call them babies because they're really babies. The babies in the womb, they haven't done anything bad. You notice how that works? He's kind of agreeing with what I just said about value determined by what you do, how you behave. And at least when it comes to punishments, we value the baby more because it hasn't done these heinous things. And so we keep it alive. We value the mass serial rapist less. It's a burden to society, so we either lock them up or kill them.
Is disgusting. and horrible. But yes, the idea here is that in Genesis 9:6, you're different than animals. You are in God's image. This means that.
Yeah, this is part of the insecurities of I need to feel special. This is that existential angst. If I am just an animal, then I don't have value. Or no, he admits animals have value, less value. If I'm just an animal, I have less value. And I don't want to have less value, so I'm more than just an animal. I think that's the logic he's using here. Well, and plus a holy text that he thinks is holy said so.
Value is innate. If you're human, you're in God's image. This value goes into every human being from the moment they are a human being, which would be the moment of conception. If you're pro-choice and you think conception doesn't begin life and doesn't begin human life, you are way behind the science. You're a biological flat earther at this point. No offense, flat earthers. This is to just draw a parallel here. You are very behind the curve.
Yeah, my cheek cell has human life in it, right? Has the DNA. And we kill our cheek cells every day,
so to speak, on the topic of biology. So my own story, let me apply this to me a little bit. It's not as shiny as this person might have assumed, which is ironic that they assume this. They just see my car and see a bumper sticker and they assume they know my life.
Is a blastocyst a baby? Well, of course not, Mark Von Wisco, but for purposes of talking to Christians, yeah, granted. Why not? Because to say a blastocyst, for those of you from Tuscaloosa, Alabama, is that it? Tuscaloosa. For those of you Christians from Tuscaloosa, a blastocyst is a embryo in the 8-cell stage, 16-cell stage, in there somewhere. And it reminds me of vegans when they say, if you eat cheese, you're a rapist. Some of you are going, what? What is Doug talking about? No, think about it. In order to have cheese, you got to have milk. In order to have milk from a cow, that cow has to be pregnant. How do we get the cow pregnant? You rape them. You artificially inseminate them. So they're constantly pregnant, constantly making milk, so you can have milk and cheese. So we humans are rapists every time we drink milk and eat cheese. Have you ever heard a vegan say this? They say this. At least I've heard vegans say this. Isn't that silly, though? Isn't that like poisoning the well? Is that the technical term? But this is what I think people like Mike do with blastocysts and calling it babies. Although I'm not so sure Mike would say that. Maybe he would say a blastocyst isn't a baby, but it will become a baby, which he's technically, or he is correct then.
My own story is not quite so bright and shiny. I could tell you lots and lots of stories, but I'm going to give you the bottom line conclusion that I had when I first came to Christ, when I was about 12 years old.
12.
And let me just say this. I had come to a realization at a certain point that and this was my belief at the time. I have a good relationship with my dad now. We're friends. I love my dad, and he loves me. But at the time, I didn't believe my dad loved me. Like, I legitimately believed he did not care about me. I didn't think he hated me. I just thought he didn't care. I had a lot of good reasons for thinking that, and that would imply that it was therefore maybe a mercy thing to just kill me. My stepdad, who was in my life, my parents got divorced when I was too young to remember, and my stepdad actually disliked me. Everybody knew it. Everybody in the family knew it. He just kind of hated me, and he made, I think he enjoyed when I cried. That's true.
By the way, for those of you who want to know why Mike Winger is the person he is today, listen carefully. This is his testimony.
I'm not looking for sob stories here. I'm not looking to make you guys feel bad for me. God has so redeemed all the hardship I went through as a child that I don't look back at it in that way. I look back at it and I'm like, wow, look at what you did through this, God. Okay, so there isn't that kind of thing. But for an illustration, I'll just say this without telling you guys a lot of stories. There was a long season of life where when he was around, because it was a rocky marriage and he was in and out of the house all the time, when my stepdad was around, me and my sister would get home from school and we would go to our rooms and we would sit there for hours until my mom got home, because we knew that if we just showed our faces in the living room where he was at all times, creating a cloud of smoke with his chain smoking, where he was at all times, that it was going to be ugly for us, okay? That it was going to be unpleasant, that he was going to take out his irritations in life towards us.
Oh, this is sad. Really sad that kids have to hide in their rooms from their stepdads. I just watched The Voice, the first episode of the new season, Ariana Grande is a new judge. And my daughter loves Ariana Grande and loves The Voice. And so I watched The Voice with her, and we had a great time. We laughed. It was fun. Quality bonding time with my daughter. And my wife was there too. And I can't imagine living in a household where you have that separation, where the parents and the children just avoid each other. But it's obvious here that there is a better scenario. The better scenario is to have children and the parents deeply desire to have those children from conception, right? Stepdads, stepmoms, it's not their kids. Now, they can still love someone else's kids. But in this situation, I think Mike Winger would admit that. No, I don't think he would. I was going to say try to get back to that less wrong, more wrong thing. I had to pay a lot of money for my kids. I bought them. Test tube babies. Here's another uncomfortable question. Probably it's going to be uncomfortable for both Christians and atheists alike listening. What do you predict the crime rates would do in the world if every child born was born through the process of in vitro fertilization? Would it go up? Would it go down? Stay the same? What do you think would happen to poverty in the world if every child born was born through the process of in vitro fertilization? Test tube babies, years of work, money, time, planning. Would poverty go up, down, stay the same? Isn't it so terrible that kids can go in the back of a car, have a little fun and coitus, pop babies out like it's candy, and other people in committed relationships spend years trying to have a child and can't do it? It's really sick, right? The dirty evolutionary problem we have here.
And towards me in particular. And so we would just stay in our rooms. When my mom got home, we could come out and he would then just ignore us. And that was fine because he didn't want to have a fight with her about it. My mother had other things going on I don't want to get into, but let me just say things were unpleasant for me. When I was invited to church at the age of 12, it was the reason I went was not because I was interested in church. It was a buddy who asked me in junior high, hey, you want to come to youth group? I had no idea what that was.
PineCreek theorem with a friend.
It was near my house. It was close enough to walk. It was just literally a way to get out of the house. And that's why I started going to church, where I met the Lord. What I learned from God was that I had value and I had purpose and I had meaning apart from all the stuff going on in my life.
Yeah, so this is a bit of an aside, but Christianity saved Mike. Maybe not literally his life, but Christianity, he felt unwanted by his stepfather. He goes to church and now he has a heavenly father who cares about him deeply, just the opposite of his stepfather at the time. How can that not impact how you view the evidence later in life? You are more willing to give this idea of the Heavenly Father the benefit of the doubt when you read the New Testament and you say, oh, I got sufficient evidence for the resurrection of Jesus. I really don't think what I just said is unreasonable. This gets to bias, right?
I did not have much hope in life. I didn't have a lot of perspective or view of self-value. I would have viewed myself kind of the way that the woman who wrote the note would have viewed me. Oh, what a worthless life. What a pointless existence. But what I learned from God, and this was without anybody teaching it to me, is just what happened in my life when my life was transformed by Christ. Psalm 27:10. For my father and my mother have forsaken.
Good question, B. Guzman. If Mike had walked into a mosque, if he had a Muslim friend, if he lived in a different country, wouldn't he find this idea, this concept of a perfect father? Although I don't think Muslims really view Allah as a father figure, do they? If there's a Muslim in here, they can let me know.
But the Lord will take me in. This is what I experienced, okay? God took care of me. God became my father, my God, present with me, showing me that I was loved, that I was cared for, that God so loved me. Like, knowing God's love put ground under my feet. You see, what I'm saying here is the Christian worldview is what rescues us from this sort of horrific genocidal logic.
Yeah, it rescues us. This is why I think we've evolved to have religion, these ideas, these concepts of a perfect creator taking care of us, caring for us, wanting to love us, wanting to give justice. This is why I sometimes think maybe to stamp out religion would be a bad thing for people like Mike. Like, let's face it, Mike's situation when he was 12, 13 sounds pretty bad, but it's still nothing compared to other kids who actually get physically beaten every day, who are, some of them, in a dungeon and get fed scraps and then are molested. Now, if you truly believe that there's a creator God out there who will save you from that, or that even if you do die, that you'll have a reward, a better place, that will help keep you from committing suicide, yes?
We realize that all humans have innate value because they are made in God's image, and that God, you look at the gospel of Christ, that God loves them, even though they've sinned, even though they've fallen short, that they can be redeemed, they can be brought into relationship with God through Christ. You are valuable, and there's a God who truly loves you, even though you're evil and you need grace and forgiveness. But
you're evil, created in the image of God. You're evil. You guys catch that? You were created in the image of God, but you're evil.
Honest people know this about themselves, and so yes, God loves the wicked. He also then loves babies in the womb.
God loves the wicked. There's a lot of Christians who would disagree with that.
And they're valuable. God's love put ground under my feet in my life, freed me from thinking that I didn't matter, because as far as I could tell, I didn't matter to especially the two men that were in my life. So number one, I didn't quite pass that test. Not quite like she thinks. Number two, let's look at number two, second reason why I maybe should have been aborted. That my parents could financially support me. That's funny. Those who lived poor, they know a couple things. They know this. Poverty, unless it's life-threatening poverty, it's not that big of a deal. Okay, it matters, but especially to a child who grows up in a lot of poverty, that it doesn't ruin you. It's just how it is. Okay, like I can't tell you how many times my mom, we were poor for American standards at least. Okay, not for complete and destitute poverty, but I can't tell you how many times my mom came to us and said, "Hey kids, for the next 2 weeks, we have $20 for food." So that we were.
This is an interesting topic, because I think Christians like Mike Winger do lean right, Republican leaning, and they're very much like me. They believe in personal responsibility. Am I wrong? And there might be one or two Mike Winger followers in the live stream chat, but I think I'm hitting the nail on the head here. But now we have a problem. We have a problem of Christians like Mike claiming personal responsibility, sort of against handouts, work for your food, and then producing kids by the bucketful. That type of family dynamic is waning as society improves. Yeah, we're improving. But 50 years ago, whatever, 40 years ago, you would have huge families where the parents can't afford their kids. And they will say things like, God will provide. Don't worry, we can have another child. God will provide. We're barely making ends meet now, but let's pump out another kid. God will provide. How many parents today who have, let's say, 4 or 5 kids, if they had to pay for their public education out of pocket, how many could do it? I'm heaping a ton of guilt on you right now. I think the average cost public schools $10,000 a child per year. Is that fair? Some higher, some lower. If you have 5 kids, how many parents here listening with 4 or 5 kids could write a check for $40,000 to $50,000 a year for K through 12 education every year? Raise your hand. No, some of you can. I know that, but most of you can't. When you say the Lord will provide, what really you're saying is the government will provide through public education. Sure, you pay taxes, property taxes, but don't tell me for 1 second you pay $50,000 a year in property taxes, and not all your property taxes go to public schools. Anyhow, you live in a system, in a society that grants you the ability to pump out 4 or 5 kids, and at least the immediate cost is covered. You're, in a way, forcing others to pay for your own kids, right? This bothers. What I just said is true, but it will bother Christians like Mike Winger. Well, Mike Winger doesn't have kids, but... Well, and the thing is, a lot of Christians like Mike Winger, they will homeschool. So they say, Doug, don't worry about me. Oh, I've got it covered. We homeschool our kids. Now, what kind of education are those kids getting? Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not against homeschooling per se. I homeschool my daughter, but I got 2 master's degrees. My wife's a certified teacher. She has 3 degrees. I mean, and it's a struggle for us. We're highly educated. We're upper middle class, and it's still a struggle. Can you imagine if you got strikes against you and you're working 2 jobs to make ends meet and you're still in your homeschooling your kids?
Short on things. I remember my stepdad's car getting repossessed. They said that it was stolen. I found out many years.
Hey, thank you for the donation, Justin Bieber. Again, Doug's keeping me from having coitus with my beloved wife, but how could I even miss another show where Mike's being bullied once again? Yeah, that's another thing. It's like, you can still have sex without having coitus. You know what I mean? You get what I'm getting at?
Later that was just repossessed, and they were just lying because he was embarrassed. But he had this like Z28 he never should have got. And
yeah, see, there's a prime example. Stupidity. If you have $20 for food for the next 2 weeks and you're buying a Z, what do you say, 28? Is that like a Camaro or is that a pickup truck? Silverado had a Z something. But yeah, I mean, stupid. Stupid parents having kids, sacrificing food on the table for a depreciating asset.
The car got stolen, or so we thought, in the middle of the night. I remember him getting up and racing and freaking out and yelling at the guy who took it, but it was actually just repossessed because, money was not handled well. So some of you may not know, this is like a
Camaro, yeah.
Something called macaroni and tomato soup. So this is where, at least for our family, you have no money. Okay, so you just take a bag of macaroni noodles, right? You boil them.
Red Road says, if you homeschool your kids, you're delusional. You think you're better than your own community. Yeah, right. Actually, Red Roads, is it inconceivable that some homeschool parents are actually more competent than public school teachers? Oh, do I diss public school teachers right now? Yeah, why not? I think I'm hated already by so many. I would say K through 4 The average IQ of a K through 4 elementary school teacher is not that high. Now, high school is a different story. Middle school is somewhere in the middle. But I would dare to say that not in most cases, but in a lot of cases, parents could, if they had the time, could educate their children better. What I'm saying is just so harsh. I really do think it's true because, number one, homeschoolers get 1-on-1, if not 1-on-3, 1-on-4 at the most. Well, there's some big Mormon families. But the bottom line is you get more personalized attention than you do at a public school. That's the truth. Now, don't get me wrong. There's a lot of stupid homeschoolers out there. But there's also a lot of bright ones too.
Them in water. You dump tomato soup, a few cans, not like the 50-50 ratio of tomato soup to water you usually have, but you just dump a couple cans in there. It's kind of bland. And that's dinner. That's dinner. And then I would just put ketchup in there to try to like add some flavor.
See, just when I offend someone about one thing, then they agree with me on another, and then I offend them on one thing, and then they agree. It just goes back and forth. I think in some viewers' minds, it's like listening to me is like watching a tennis match. It's like they don't know what to do.
I didn't care as a kid. I was just like, whatever. This tastes fine to me as long as there's food for me to eat because I was just constantly hungry. But there were times where it was pretty slim. And I do remember for a season when we discovered top ramen, eating top ramen so often that I got sick of it to this day. To this day, so many years later, I will not eat top ramen. I mean, if I have to, I'd eat it, but not by choice. I've had too much. At the time, it was like 17 cents a meal for top ramen. I mean, so we're just eating it all the time.
Yeah, Dark, and I agree. High IQ is not everything to be a good teacher in elementary. A lot of it is being kind and compassionate. However, I do think the ability to organize your lesson plan, be efficient, and think through different scenarios is better done with people who are naturally higher IQ. Here's another thing I'm going to say to peeve some people off. Humans are not equal in IQ. Not even close. There's a big difference between an IQ of 105 and 85. Huge difference.
Constantly, right? So I remember a story. Here's a little story for you guys. I'm trying to share the nicer stories for you because I don't really want to. I'm not trying to put people on blast for things that happened so long ago, and their lives have changed, and my life has changed, and I want to acknowledge that, give God praise for that. But I remember we were poor enough that I did have a bike, but my bike helmet I couldn't afford to replace. We had a pet dog. Crosswalk. It's residential.
He's telling a story of how a woman chastised him for not wearing a bike helmet. It's an interesting story, but not too relevant.
No protection. Major issues in my life that are on her list of 3. Should I have been aborted? Do you guys think it was okay to kill me? Because I was that embryo in the womb. I was that baby in the womb. That was me. I didn't come from a baby. It's not like when birth happens, all of a sudden there's a person there. We're just talking about moving from this part of the womb to that part of the womb.
JC says IQ is not an accurate measure of intelligence, just test taking. Yes, you're right. And test taking asks questions about what you know and how you can, not only what you know, but how you process and what you can see that's not seen. Like some IQ tests don't even have numbers or words. They're just pictures. And so usually people who are against IQ testing have below average IQ.
Should I have been aborted? But it gets way worse than that. What about people who are in abject poverty? The Democratic Republic of Congo represents the poorest country in the world. Did you know that? The poorest country in the world. Let's apply her logic. This insane, morally insane woman who represents a very large portion of our society today to the Democratic Republic of Congo.
See, I appreciate Mike Winger bringing this up because he's not hiding from it. Now, this is the question to Christians listening. Look at those children and ask yourself the question, would you have pressed the button to have them not exist? So they're conceived, and then you press the button. Boom, gone. Even before the mother knows she's pregnant. This is a hypothetical thought experiment question. Would you rather have these kids press the button, they're conceived, boom, and they're gone? Poof, poof, they're gone. Or would you rather have them suffer? How old are these kids? I don't know. 3, 4, 5, 6, 2, 3. I think, and again, let's not view this in terms of right and wrong, sin or not sin. Let's just view this, which is wrong or more wrong? Which is wrong or less wrong? Wouldn't it be less wrong to abort these children if we could, seconds after they're conceived? Wouldn't that be less wrong than what we're seeing on our screens right now?
"33 of the 40 poorest countries in the world are in sub-Saharan Africa. Should they all have abortions? Is that merciful?" In 2018, it was estimated that in the Democratic Republic of Congo, that the Congolese population has 73% of them who live on less than $1.90 a day. 73%. 43% of Congolese children are currently malnourished, according to worldbank.org.
Would it be less wrong for all these kids not to exist? Not to have been born? Knowing, and we're talking in hindsight, if you're a Christian and you value this thing called compassion, I don't know, my moral intuition say it is better, it is less wrong for them to have been aborted as soon as possible after conception compared to this. Sure, you in your worldview, you can call them image bearers, you can call them souls who someday might inherit eternal life, but you get that even if you abort them after they're conceived, right? They still go to heaven, according to, I think, many Christians' worldview.
Things are getting worse right now because of COVID in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Now, we have two options with these beautiful children made in God's image. We can try to kill them by supporting Planned Parenthood, or maybe we can help them by supporting Samaritan's Purse.
Yeah, okay, this is a great point Mike's bringing up. We can abort them, hopefully as soon as possible after conception, or help them. Now that they have been born, yes, definitely help them. I agree, Mike. But the problem is, for a variety of reasons, many of them don't get helped. Wouldn't it be less wrong to abort them in the case of those who are not helped? It's a very similar question to, wouldn't it be better, you're going to have a child, and that child, God knows, or you know, whatever, it's going to go to hell. Wouldn't it be better for that child never to been brought into the world or conceived? Any Christian who says, no, it's better to be conceived knowing that they will go to hell than not be conceived at all. If you're a Christian with that worldview, and you truly believe that, what? Why? Isn't it less wrong to abort them than them go to hell? I think that's the extreme case.
I have a link down below. I'm not making anything off this, but there's a link down below to Samaritan's Purse if you want to support their efforts to help the Democratic Republic of Congo, to give them supplies, infrastructure, food, education, care, and also the gospel of Jesus Christ. Then, there's something.
Yeah, also the gospel. Isn't it terrible when you link help and food to the gospel message?
And you can do if you like to help them. But no, actually, if you believe what the moral insanity of our culture, then you think that the merciful thing to do is to kill the kids earlier on, right? Kill them when they're even younger, right? If a baby dies at 1 year old, that's tragedy. But if the baby dies when it's 7 months of life inside the womb, well, that's okay. That's not tragedy. That's merciful. That's the insane logic. So we're confronted with the problem of poverty, neglect, or lack of care, and we have two solutions: kill them or take care of them, right? If you're born into a family where a parent doesn't love you, the solution is for the parent to love you. If you're born into a community which is in poverty, the solution is to try to help that community come out of poverty. If you're born into a situation that is rough, the solution is not to kill the kid. The third reason given in the note, let's see. The third reason, here we go, first page. She says that she's grateful that I was loved and wanted. I'm not entirely sure how much that applies to me. Number two, that my parents could financially support me. That's not true. Number three, they didn't bring me into an abusive or neglected environment that you would face a life of suffering or even death. Well, I was definitely in a very unhappy environment. I was not happy as a kid. I was a sad, lonely, and somewhat depressed kid. That was my life before Christ. It was my life was transformed when I came to Christ. I think it was how messed up things were for me personally.
Yeah, the reason why I left is because one of my test tube babies left the oven on, and I started to smell things. Would I have pressed the button?
Or at least, that I felt that things were that wrong and that off. That was one of the reasons why I clung to God so much. And at the age of 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, like as I'm following.
Hey, he just admits it here. The reason why I clung to God so much.
When Jesus, and I'm taking things so seriously. And I would see kids that were like raised in the church, taking it so for granted, that the gospel of Christ, the truth about.
Oh, there's one thing I missed that I wanted to say here.
You're born into a situation that is rough. The solution is not to kill the kid.
When you're born in a situation where things are rough, the solution is not to kill the kid. Think the Canaanites. Right? That was a rough situation where people were sacrificing their kids to their gods and they were just doing very rotten, terrible things. Mike is just saying the solution here is not to kill them. What did Yahweh do? Commanded people to kill them. Am I wrong? No, I'm not wrong.
The third reason given in the note, let's see. The third reason, here we go, first page. She says that she's grateful that I a sad, lonely so much. And at the age of 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, like as I'm following Jesus and I'm taking things so seriously. And I would see kids that were like raised in the church, taking it so for granted, that the gospel of Christ, the truth about God. And to me, I had felt life without it before I got that. And so I just thought it was weird that they would take it so for granted. I realize that's just part of our human condition. We're really good at taking things for granted.
Yeah, Erica, I'm taking my time with the Old Testament stuff. But really, if you have people like Frank Turek saying stuff like,
because if Christianity's true, men don't really die, we just change location.
Yeah, if Christianity is true, men don't die, babies don't die, they just change location. Think of it this, if you're a Christian who thinks abortion's wrong, think of it from a very pragmatic point. There's a couple things, assumptions, though. Assumption number one, you believe in eternal conscious torment, which Christians like Mike Winger do. Assumption number two, all babies go to heaven when they die. I think Mike Winger believes that, and if not, a lot of Christians do. What harm is there really in aborting then? Narrows the gate to life. Wide is the gate to destruction. Odds are, I don't care how good of a Christian parent you are, odds are, especially in today's day and age, your child's going to reject Jesus. Oh, my child won't. For me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Yeah, really? How many Christian parents are watching right now whose child has left the faith? And pragmatically, you ought to want children to be aborted. Just because life here on planet Earth is a vapor. It's all about the afterlife if you take this version of Christianity. You should want children to be aborted. So they don't have that 80% chance or whatever it is of going to hell. According to that recent poll that I did on a previous live stream, only 6% of people who call themselves Christians are real Christians. And I think this represents Mike Winger's worldview. If that's true, all these flag-waving, phony Christians claiming that they're Christian, but Jesus would say, get away from me, I never knew you. That's going to be your kids. Would you press that button to abort them so they can go directly to heaven? Or why are you taking the risk of bringing them into this world? Some of them, yes, will follow Jesus and be good Christian people, but most of them won't. If you agree with those assumptions I made. You know, even the abortion doctor can change his or her life around and still go to heaven, right? All things are possible through Christ. The mother can change her ways, repent of her evil deeds if she gets an abortion, and still go to heaven. But that baby is guaranteed heaven, assuming you agree with that theology, if you abort it. I tell you, abortions are the greatest cause of people going to heaven. It's way more effective than evangelism. So even if, this is really going to peeve off Christians, even if it's a sin to abort babies, do it anyhow. Sin, because that will increase the kingdom if you believe all babies go to heaven. Am I wrong? Well, Doug, if I sin, then maybe I won't go to heaven. You'll be fine. You think abortion you think murderers can't go to heaven? Look at King David. I'm sure he's in heaven, and he was a murderer. He's a murderer that God said he loved. One of the few men that, he truly loved. So don't worry about that. You can always repent.
But yeah, that.
Oh, Stevie says, I know Doug is joking about wanting more abortion, but I think if the other problems are alleviated, abortion wouldn't be a tempting solution. Yes, Stevie, I agree. And I haven't given my position. I am against abortion. But I would never punish a woman for getting one. And I wouldn't feel bad, at least not that bad, for an early term killing of a baby. Own it! You got to own it. Yeah. Kill that baby if it's very, very young. Kill it. It's not that bad, especially under Mike's worldview, because they go to heaven. Now, here's where I would really press the cognitive dissonance pedal hard on Christians. If you really believe that, let's do an extreme case, an embryo, because that's how this video started with the embryo bumper sticker. If you kill that embryo, if a mother who understands what abortion is, she's not deluded. Let's say she made a mistake, forgot her contraception. She doesn't want the pregnancy, and she aborts. It's an embryo, so she wouldn't know. Let's say it's in vitro fertilization, and she's a doctor, and she's looking at an embryo in a petri dish, and she can either throw it down the sink or implant it in a woman. And she chooses, knowing full well that she's killing an embryo. Does this mother deserve to go to jail for her life? Should this mother get the death penalty? If you are a Christian like Mike Winger, I think you're forced to say that we need to lock women up who have abortions, knowing what they're doing and willingly choose to do it. You need to round these women up and lock them up, and maybe even some, if they've done it multiple times, put them on death row. And if you do not hold that position as a Christian like Mike Winger, you're a hypocrite, especially if you're for the death penalty for murderers. You are a flat-out hypocrite if you do not call for the death row convictions of women who knowingly choose abortions. They know what they're doing and they choose to do it anyhow. First-degree murder. But I suspect Christians like Mike Winger, now some Christians might actually, I got to be careful here because Some Christians agree with me, but I don't think Mike does. You know why? Because he's a compassionate guy deep down. Maybe too compassionate. And I don't think he would go there. But Mike, if you want to be consistent in your beliefs, you need to go there. There's probably women in your church who have had abortions, who knowingly did it and are not repentant. Well, even if they are repentant, it doesn't matter. The law is the law. They, like the verse you read earlier, eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. Even if they have asked God for forgiveness and they've changed their lives, Mike, you need to approach that woman and say, you know what? You deserve the death penalty or life in prison for what you did. Do you have the guts to do that, Mike? My guess is no, because deep down, you do not value that fetus, that baby, as much as you do other humans. If you did, I think you would agree with me. I'm curious, what's your prediction for people listening? Do you think Mike Winger would say, yeah, lock the women up? I don't know. I don't think he would say that. I think he would say, well, these poor women, they're deceived. They didn't know what they're doing. Well, then that's second degree murder, right? Or manslaughter at least. Even if these poor women didn't know what they were doing and they were deceived, that's no excuse for drunk drivers who kill people. This is, in my opinion, a good strategy to use when talking to Christians like Mike Winger on this topic. You force their hand. You take it to the extreme limits and see how consistent they are. The scary thing is, some Christians might just look you in the eye and say, yeah, you're right. I'm going to go to my church tomorrow and confront some women. But I don't think most people would do that.
That's simply not true, okay? Simply not true in my life. But this is literally, this is suicide logic. This is the logic of...
Thank you for the donation. Gnostic Informant just jumped in the chat. Doesn't the baby go straight to heaven anyway? Yes, you just missed it. We talked about that.
You know what? If life's bad,
Thanks for the donation.
You just kill the person, right? In this case, you're going to kill the baby, but the logic applied to yourself here is the suicide logic, which would cause a lot of people to give up on life far too soon. Far too soon, especially in Christ when there's eternal hope, eternal happiness, eternal joy. You have to hang in there.
Yeah, there it is, eternal joy.
My situation's so bad I give up. In this case, it's literally a guess. This baby, I'm going to just predict the future about this baby and say, I think their life will be bad in the future. And because of what I project and think will happen, I'm going to kill the baby as a kindness.
Yeah, it's a little more in depth than that. If you have a situation where 95% of babies born in the Congo in a certain tribe or whatever die under the age of 10 from malnutrition, starvation, it's more than just a guess. It's more than, oh, I'm just trying to predict the future and who knows. But no, we have evidence that there's tremendous pain and suffering in certain places of the world if people bring life into the world. It's not a guess. Now, is it certainty? No.
This is genocidal, horrific, murderous logic with a smiley face.
Yeah, genocidal. Won't go there.
Notice what she says would be so tragic is that if I was brought into a situation of abuse, a life of suffering, or even death, and I could just feel her like, oh, even death.
Tony D asks, doesn't Mike realize how silly he sounds? So sad. No, of course not. And, some things he said I agree with. Like, I think we should help people in other countries who are starving, bring life into the world. He's making some good points. But I think where he and a lot of Christians like him get stuck is this whole idea of the binary light switch of right and wrong. Sin, no sin. Sin, no sin. Versus this is wrong, but it's less wrong than that. And I think that's the way on this topic with abortion, it has to be looked at. I think that's the wiser way to go. Yeah, abortion is wrong because it's usually who's pro-abortion? I think almost no one. Who wants surgery? Raise your hand. No one. In a perfect world, women would not get pregnant who do not want to get pregnant. Why would they do something they don't want? Unless to torture themselves. I don't know.
The reason why this shocks me is because she literally holds up the death of this
Oh, we haven't talked about rape yet.
child as a tragedy, and her solution to the tragedy is to kill the child earlier on. Right? Like, what if the child's going to die at 7? Should we kill the child at 3? Is that better? What if the child's going to die at 3? Should we kill the child at...
Okay, you listen to what Mike's saying here?
Even death. The reason why this shocks me is because she literally holds up the death of this child as a tragedy, and her solution to the tragedy is to kill the child earlier on.
The solution to the tragedy is to kill the child earlier on. Isn't that the solution Yahweh had with the Canaanites, the Amalekites? The solution to the tragedy is to kill the children early on. Why is this shocking for Mike when Yahweh had the same policy with the Canaanites and the Amalekites? Okay, this is a category error. When God does it, it's good, but when humans do it, it's bad. But keep in mind, you don't know the mind of God. What if God wants abortion in certain cases? Truly, my God would never do that. Well, he did in the past if you're a literalist like Mike, whatever that means. You don't think there were pregnant women during the flood? You don't think there were pregnant women that God commanded the Israelites to kill? In Mike's worldview, I think he believes that. It was all to prevent more suffering later on. See, this is what I kind of like. When I talked to Randall Rouser a couple years ago on this topic, he played devil's advocate to his own beliefs. He doesn't believe any of that Canaanite stuff actually happened, that God never commanded it. But even if he did, I think he said this, God sees the future perfectly. And he knows by killing all those kids, all those babies, he was lowering the net suffering of the world. And this is the same thing I would say. I would say maybe abortion is less wrong because it lowers the net suffering in society. Isn't it interesting how some people will defend God with the same logic that Mike's saying is just shocking and bad? But the difference is God can see the future perfectly, right?
Like, what if the child's going to die at 7? Should we kill the child at 3? Is that better? What if the child's going to die at 3? Should we kill the child at 1? If the child will die at 1 or 10 or 30 or just live really unhappily, should we just kill the baby before they cross the barrier of the mother's womb so that we don't see them yet? They don't count yet. This is why she says if these three things cannot be in place, this is where the pro-choice logic goes into self-deceit, self-deception. She says then there's nothing beautiful nor a blessing about this poor victim coming into this world. She thinks the victim's not in the world yet. The author of the letter, the note, the person, the guy or girl, whoever it is, they think, like many people do today who support abortion, that babies in the womb are literally not existing yet. They're not in the world yet.
No, Mike, that's not what she meant. She meant that the canals suffer the consequences of their environment more so than being protected in the womb of the mother.
Well, they're not across the barrier of the womb into open air, but they're certainly in existence, right? So
yes,
this poor victim's in the world, but we need this is the reality check we need. We've got to realize that babies in the womb are alive. So listen, this is produced by Live Action. I'm gonna share a video with you. It's a few minutes long. Super good, like amazing.
Okay, yeah, he shares a video, and I'm not fast forwarding this because I think this type of technology that we have developed to see babies in the womb is part of the reason why abortion rates are dropping. Abortion rates are dropping in the US over the last 20 years because of technology like this. Because we humans are emotional creatures, and when we visualize something in our body, baby, but we don't really see it, now we can see it. And we say, no, I don't want to kill that baby. I honestly think it's because of technology, science, and education, of course, that abortion rates are dropping. It's not because people are starting to believe that we're created in the image of God. Christianity has been plummeting in the United States over the last 20 years. Abortion rates have been plummeting over the last 20 years. You would think that if fewer abortions were due to more people thinking we're created in the image of God and Christianity is true, that they would be correlated. But we don't see a correlation. In fact, it's the inverse. You want to lower abortions, you tell people have as much sex as you want, but not intercourse. And if you do have intercourse, you make sure you have 2-3 safety nets. And if you do get pregnant, even after the 2-3 safety nets, you take responsibility for your actions. Hey, thank you. My one black friend is here. I do so enjoy your topics, PineCreek. Mike is not careful. He also leaves out evidence that is counter to his position. Does his audience realize it? I actually was reading some of the live stream comments, and most of his followers, just the emotional gut reaction to abortion is just so alarming to them. There were some atheists in here, or at least pro-choicers in here pushing back. But I still think the best way to handle this is, number one, focus on the topic of, yeah, abortion's wrong, but it's less wrong than something else. And number two, don't be a hypocrite. If you think a mother is killing her child by willing to get an abortion, why aren't you locking her up? And that gets to, they really do value things differently. That's the whole thing. With COVID, society, I would say the majority of society are willing to accept the risk of people over 75, 80 years old dying of COVID. It's an acceptable risk to our society around the planet. If you were to take that 1 to 5% death rate of people who have COVID and shift it from over 75 years of age and put it between, let's say, 5 and 15, everything in the world would be different. That tells you right there that we as a society, we do value people differently. Grandpa, yeah, it's sad that he died, but he lived a good life, long life. But there's something about us humans when we see a child just growing up and evolving and growing and developing, and that child dies. Like, the worst funeral you can go to is the funeral of a 10-year-old. And I've been to a funeral of a 10-year-old. My friend died when I was in junior high of a ATV accident. It's not pretty, those type of funerals. So there's more pain and suffering with the death of a 10-year-old than there is with a 1-month-old. Both tragic, but there's definitely more pain and suffering because you've had 10 years to get to know this human being that's impacted lives around them. So maybe looking at it in terms of value is wrong, but to look at it in terms of impact and experiences. And I'm not sure why we've evolved this way. We will value our own children more than other people's children. And then we'll value our neighbor's children more than a different country's children, and so on. I don't know. Let's see here. There was one other thing Mike said here. See if I can find it.
Of our culture. These abortions would literally, according to at least this logic, would just be in case things are bad. And they're not justifiable, but what about all the babies that grow through hard times into wonderful lives? I mean, I don't know if my mom had gone to somebody, and some pro-choice person, maybe you out there, my mom had gone to you for counsel and said, you know, I've got a daughter already. I'm pregnant with a son now, and my marriage is falling apart. Things are really bad. I'm not really in good shape right now, and I'm going to get divorced. I'm not going to have the finances to take care of them. Life's really hard. What do you think I should do? How many of you out there would have told my mom to kill me?
Yeah, look at that language. Okay, I'm going to take his question seriously. The fact that you lived in the United States and you have opportunity like almost no other country has. Yes, I like I love America. I do. I was a poor rural Canadian immigrant to the United States. Well, maybe not too poor, but the probabilities of you still having food, shelter, and clothing in America, I would have said, no, don't press the button. Keep little Mike Winger alive. But you can imagine extreme cases like you brought up, and kudos to you for bringing up the Congo. You can say, no, seriously, it is less wrong to abort there. In fact, I would say it's okay to abort there. In fact, I would say do it. And if God thinks that's bad and sin, rebel. Look God in the eyes. Say, I'm going to purposely sin against you because it's the right thing to do. Yeah, Christian's going, no. Their minds just exploded.
You're horrible. You need to repent. Only God can forgive you. But he can forgive you, and he will forgive you. But yeah, you're absolutely, you're just...
He's describing his God, what he did with the Canaanite children. Right? Terrible society, sacrificing their babies to false gods. This is what Mike says. And then what is Yahweh's solution? Kill them all.
You're horrible. You need to repent.
Well, God can't repent. But Mike, you're calling Yahweh horrible because he's doing the same thing, or he did the same thing.
Only God can forgive you. But he can forgive you, and he will forgive you. But yeah, you're absolutely, you're disgusting.
Yeah, you're calling your God disgusting for what he did. The exact same action. Killing the babies soon to prevent suffering in the future, from preventing the Israelites from worshiping false gods, which causes even more suffering. As soon as you veer off from God's path, suffering's not far behind, right? How can we build a bridge? Building a bridge here would be, nobody wants unwanted pregnancy. So number one, education. Number two, contraception. Number three, have sex in all the ways that you want that doesn't involve intercourse. See, this is the problem. Like, Christians were with me up till the last one. No, don't have even, don't even look. I mean, you got to have a sheet. If you lust, it's you're sinning. Your mouth can't get pregnant. Why did I say that? So foul. Icky. I'm going to open the door to Christians who want to talk to me about this. If there's anything I said that you agree with or not. So the way you do that is you type www or https. Yeah, that's it, right? https. I think you need that. whereby.com/PineCreek. We'll give Christians the first kick at the can. Keep it short, keep it sweet. And we'll see where it leads. No Tangelo, please. Yeah, no. Somebody, I want some fresh meat. Some fresh blood. Until then, someone wants to come in. Yeah, Christian, come in and tell me why abortion's like why it's not even less wrong, just fully wrong. I'll ask some of the same questions I asked during this live stream, and I tell you, you're not going to be comfortable. But embrace the uncomfortableness. Hashtag no Tangelo, no Wellington. Boy, you guys are harsh. You're making it sound like they should never have even been born. You guys, don't you? I value Otangelo way more than a mass murderer. I value Wellington way more than a serial rapist. That's just how much I value them. Aiden said he wanted to talk about it, PineCreek. Okay, Aiden, come on in. Who's Aiden? Has he commented in here? Aiden, where are you? Why don't I see Aiden in the live stream chat? No one mentions aborting babies that would have resulted in a miscarriage later in pregnancy and the effects. That's true, Bruce. If God's in control of all that stuff, if there's an appointed time for man to die, then really God aborts. Abortion is the purposeful killing of life in the womb, yes? So God is, by that definition, an abortionist. Doorknob Head has quoted me, I value Tangelo way more than a mass murderer. True. The thing is, am I just preaching to the choir here? No, I said enough stuff that I'm sure I'm sure I've said things that offends everyone, right? That was the goal. If there's someone here that agrees 100% with everything I said, I'm worried. Then I'm not special. Come on, Christians, don't be scared. Let's talk about abortion. Tell me if you believe all babies go to heaven. Tell me if you believe that you would kill someone who would lead your loved one to hell. I haven't offended you yet, Darkin? Ugh. What do I need to do? Your standards are low, says Jack Russell. If you said something racist about black people, I would be offended. Okay, let me say something racist about black people. Can I say that? Is it racist to say that black people have more fast twitch muscle fiber and therefore have a higher probability of winning 100-meter races? And that they're superior to non-black people on average. It's a spectrum, of course. That's a racist comment, is I'm saying there's superiority that black people have over other races, but in a good way, right? Although there's some fast white people. I was pretty fast. And Mennonites, it's not quite a race, but if you view it like Jews, you know, they make pierogies better than even Russians. I love black people. My one black friend is here. How can I be racist if I have a black friend? That's just silly. But let's keep this on abortion. Oh, actually, yeah. We can tie those two thoughts together. In the United States, is it true that most abortions, at least as a percentage, are done by African Americans? I think that's true, right? But then you got to ask yourself, why? If it is true. I'm not sure. Is it true as a percentage, or is it true on both percentage and raw numbers? As a Russian, I'm deeply offended. Yeah, Russians should be offended. I've been hurt by a Russian. What's his name? The Muslim Russian? Yeah, Ukrainians make good pierogies. Russians do make better borscht. They developed it. Everyone should have a good cup of strong, spicy borscht. Puts hair on your chest. Here to nag. You were here, but then you left. There we go. You're on the air with Larry King. Caller, are you there? I can't hear you, so go up to make sure you have your mic set. I'll wait patiently. It's set. But not allowed. 1 sec. Okay. He's working on it. Or she. Zummerborscht. Yes, Kendra. Buchert. Is it Buchert or Bickert? I've heard it said both ways. Zummerborscht is potato borscht. It's whitish. But most borscht, I think, is reddish. You spelled pierogies wrong, Mark Vonowisko, but I forgive you. Yeah, I think it is Polish, Russian, Prussian. How did we get on the topic of a food after talking about abortion? Oh, I know how, because atheists eat babies. Hey, I think you're here and I can hear you. Thank you for the donation, my one black friend. I grew up poor and saw how big of a burden a child could be to high school kids. I have offered to adopt children that were ultimately aborted. Well, good for you, my one black friend. Yeah, the thing is, when you have kids that you can't afford, that puts your marriage at risk. The number one reason why people get divorced, isn't it because of financial difficulty? And then if you get divorced, the kids you do have suffer. Can you hear me here to nag? Okay. What do you have to say?
Hi, I just called. I wanted to hear Christian.
You're a Christian? Are you a Christian?
I think my network is not the best. Yes, I am.
Have I talked to you before?
No.
Okay. Okay, well, did you agree with anything I said or disagree?
It was an interesting talk. I'm going to say I think your humor is right on par with mine. I love it.
Okay.
um, so I don't think I can go through video games without enjoying it, even though I disagree with it. But yeah, absolutely love it.
Okay. Are you like Mike Winger type of
So
Christian or a different type of Christian?
uh, I have no idea. I guess you would have to figure that out.
Okay. Well, are you would you say that abortion is a sin? Let's get to the obvious questions.
Yes, I would.
Okay. Do you
I
think?
don't think in all cases, I think there are considerations to be looked at. I agree with you that it's a black and white scenario.
Okay. And do you think women who choose to have abortion should be put in jail?
So that was one question that you asked that I kind of had to think a lot about. Because the obvious fact is if it is actual murder that we think it is, then should it not be the woman to be in jail or serve some sort of time or penalty for that act? That was a difficult question to answer. I think if I were to be consistent, yeah, that's the route I'd have to take.
Yeah, I agree.
But at the same time, um, I guess that seems the most sensible scenario to take. That the person who commits the crime has to, I guess, deal with the punishment. But I think what the Christians tend to say would be we actually uh, use the sentence, I guess, or do whatever action is necessary on the person who performed it. That would be the doctor in the case.
But the woman went to the doctor, yes?
Yeah, that is true. So I took a similar situation. What if I were to consult an assassin to kill someone? Would it would it not send me to be liable too for this scenario?
Yep.
Yeah, so that's why I have to conclude that it makes sense that women too should deal with the consequence of such a crime.
Now, if a Christian says, "No, I don't think women should be put in jail for life or death row for having abortion, multiple abortions, knowing what they're doing," why do you think they would say that?
So if I guess we would look at the situation as to why it came around. Even though someone committed a crime, let's say a murderer, and we found out that they have been in a compromised situation, would you then put them on death row?
Well, let's say
Oh wait,
they
1 second. Do I need first to ask? I have to ask you first. Do you think people who commit horrible crimes do deserve death row?
commit what?
Horrible crimes.
Horrible crimes. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm okay with the death penalty, just because I think it's actually less suffering to kill a person than put them in prison for the rest of their lives. So in other words, I think the best case would be to say, okay, you killed 5 people. We're going to put you in prison for a while. Make sure you definitely did kill them. If we're like 99.999% confident that they've killed their serial killer, say to them, okay, we'll give you a choice. You can either spend the rest of your life in jail or we can kill you. What do you want? And if they say, kill me, I'm all for the death penalty.
What if they say don't kill me?
I would prefer to kill them just because they take up so much resources. They take up, yeah, like you got to feed them and house them.
Right.
It's not much
Right.
cheap. But right now, because of the appeal process, it's so expensive anyhow. But yeah, I think it's just cheaper to kill them.
And what if we were in a hypothetical world where it would be completely we have no resources that's being spent on them, and they can continue to be in prison?
Say again, if we had the resources, then
If in a hypothetical world where we didn't spend anything, it's economically, what do I say? It has no economic
yeah, oh yeah, then that's fine.
benefit.
Yeah, that's fine. But we got to make sure
They-
that they stay locked up and don't do it again. You know, that for granted, and also that they want to live. I actually think a lot of people
Would rather not.
would say if you can kill me quickly without me even knowing, then sure, go for it.
True.
But let's get back to abortion. If are you married? Do you have kids?
Nope.
Oh, do you love any? Do you love anyone?
Yes.
Do you believe in an eternal conscious torment?
I'm not 100% sure about what eternal torment would look like, or would it be annihilation or whatever. I'm not 100% sure on my stance.
Okay, if eternal conscious torment were true, then what's the big deal with aborting babies? Aren't we? And if all babies go to heaven, do you believe that?
Again, I think what we can say is that they mostly would go to heaven. I'm not 100% sure.
Okay, I'll just take that for granted. You're not 100% sure of anything, which is fine. So you don't have to caveat everything. But if it were true that babies go to heaven, why is abortion so bad again?
So I guess there's a difference between, I think as you mentioned it, there is a category difference between me sending someone to heaven, whereas God doing that.
But doesn't God sometimes? Well, He's done in the past. He's commanded people to
Yes.
keep. Yeah. So, but who?
So
Hang
go
on.
ahead.
Well, who cares what
ahead.
God wants? If it's true that
Mhm.
babies will go to heaven if you kill them, and let's say God
Mhm.
makes a sad face when you do it, so what? So what if God gets sad? So what if God disapproves? A baby's going to heaven.
Well, I guess the question will come down to, would the means justify the end?
The end justifying the means. Yeah, in this case,
Sorry, the
yeah,
end justify the means.
of course it does, right? Because life is just a vapor here on planet Earth. We were born, we die. Life is a mess, and some good things happen, but mostly a lot of bad things happen. The real party is the afterlife, which is eternal.
Mhm.
So that's what we should be focused on: is the afterlife. Yes.
Of course, I agree with you, but I do not really think that the end really justifies the means.
Okay. Explain. Like what? Why is it bad if we kill a baby and it goes to heaven?
Why is it bad if we kill a baby and it goes to... No, there's nothing bad about the baby going to heaven. It's the
Okay.
part that we've taken to choose as to how the baby goes to heaven.
Okay. Well, we'll make it painless, very quick and fast.
So, we haven't been given, according to the Christian theology at least, that we haven't been given all authority to end or choose whether someone lives or dies.
So
If
what? We
they
don't
are
need it.
completely...
We don't need authority from God to do it. People have been doing it for years, decades,
True.
centuries,
True.
millennia.
And has that been a good thing?
Maybe sometimes yes, sometimes no. But if babies go to heaven, then I would say yes, it's a good thing.
So I'm from what I hear, you would consider that according to Christian thought, it's always justified to kill a child.
Well, I'm asking the question.
If Christians were consistent with their theology,
If
it would mean that it's always better to kill a child.
Yeah,
because it's 100% guarantee that they would end up in heaven.
It depends what you mean by better, but if God says don't abort babies, and your definition of better or worse or good or bad is based on that, then no. But who cares what God thinks or says? If it's true that these babies will avoid eternal conscious torment and go to heaven, if those things are true, then I say, God, your opinion doesn't matter here because they're going to heaven, and so be it. And God can't change his nature. He's a just God. So, and we know that if you also believe that the majority of people don't go to heaven if they live their life, then I would just look God square in the eyes and say, I know you're upset, but you'll get over it, God. Go to your room, God, and cry for 2 hours.
So if you're looking at the Christian narrative, it seems like, let me just put a vague statistic out there. Say like 90% of the world is going to heaven. 10% of them are going to heaven. I'm going to be the best person to end the 90% of lives just when they were born, and they're all going to go to heaven.
Yeah, what's wrong with that?
So that's a good hypothetical scenario, but I don't think if that were true, it makes no sense. But I don't think that's how the whole God's divine justice would work, because that's certainly a loophole.
Well, yeah, this whole thought experiment is based on the premise that all babies go to heaven.
Baby, yeah.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you a different type of thought experiment. You have to kill two things, and you have to, and both of them will be painless. But
Okay.
but you have to kill two things. One thing is a service dog, a beautiful German Shepherd, or a pedophile. Which one of the two do you kill?
Could you clarify on the pedophile? Is he someone who was and is no longer?
No. A pedophile is someone who, let's say, rapes.
Is that a continuous process? Is it a past process?
Continuous. Lives his life. He has an urge to have coitus with little boys.
What you mean.
Yeah.
No, I'm talking about, is this someone who understands that it's wrong to be doing that and continues to not do such a thing?
No, he's doing it
in the past, currently.
Yeah.
And so I would obviously want to save the child and hence kill the pedophile.
Okay. Yeah, me too. Save the dog, kill the human.
What?
We're agreed, right? You save the
save the dog. Yeah. Right.
You save the dog and you kill the human. Now, which one has a greater value to society? The pedophile or the dog?
I think intrinsically I would say intrinsically humans have a better value.
Which one has more value to society? The service dog or the pedophile human?
So in this hypothetical, you are assuming we are taking a situation where a pedophile is going to it's a continuous process of being a pedophile, always going to harm children. In that kind of a scenario, even though they are doing a morally wrong, of course, economically, I would have to say that the pedophile is going to be better for society economically. That doesn't make sense. I'd have to conclude that the pedophile is worse, has to die because of me trying to save the child from the pedophile.
Well, yeah, I can even say that the pedophile stopped pedophiling, but we can say that through statistics, there's relapse 10% of the time.
Okay.
So are you willing to take that risk, 10%?
Over a service dog? I think I would.
You would keep a pedophile alive with a 10% chance of raping a child, and you would kill the dog instead?
Yes.
Oh, that's terrible. That's terrible.
Yeah, I guess I can see how it would seem that way. If let's assume that we are in an idealistic scenario. Hey, I wouldn't mind if we know for certain what the pedophile's intentions are. If we know for certain that the pedophile is not going to commit this act again, then hey, let's keep him. If we're sure that he is going to commit or continue in his process, I would say end it.
Have you heard the in vitro fertilization thought experiment?
I didn't know there was a thought experiment on that.
So you know what in vitro fertilization is?
Oh yeah.
Okay. So you have an in vitro fertilization clinic. It's burning to the ground. On the counter, there's 1,000 embryos, 8 cells, blastocysts. But in the corner of the room is a...
Oh, right. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's a toddler, 4-year-old.
Yeah.
Who do you save? You can only save one. Save the 1,000 embryos or save the toddler. Which one would you save?
So if you were taking me, an ignorant person, on what an IVF embryo looks like on a petri dish, I would think that's just some random creep, something happening there, some science.
No, you know in the thought experiment that these are precursors to babies.
Mm-hmm.
That if you...
I know for sure that once I take and save these petri dishes, we are going to get, wait, how many did you say?
1,000. So even if only 10% take, that's 100. So
So
would you save the embryos, or would you save the one toddler?
So if we know, this is a hypothetical, that we know that this is 100 embryos of certainty out of the 1,000, and we know that they're going to become viable humans and grow up. If we know that, you're saying we intrinsically know that that would be the better choice. But that's not the case, right? Not maybe 0.1, 0.01% of the
All I want to
population would
know
actually know
is
that.
the place is burning to the ground.
Hmm.
You have
Yeah, that's what I've said. So
which one would you save?
given your hypothetical, okay, if you're not saying that the petri dishes would be certain life, I would obviously pick the child. I think we all would instinctively pick the child over the petri dishes.
And let's say I told you that it's certain that 100 of the 1,000 would be implanted and
So even you telling me wouldn't change much, because it's only a tiny portion of the population would actually know the worth of that petri dishes. Not everyone can see that and figure out this is actual life. If I take the hypothetical, maybe we're on Mars and there's a small child here and there's 100 lives in certainty here in this petri dish, what do you think the scientists doing this would save?
the dog. Or sorry, the toddler.
Over the 100 petri dishes.
Every hour of the week.
Okay.
We don't need no stinking embryos.
So I think if we were to change the scenario to hypothetical where we know
we can always produce more embryos.
How? If you're in a situation where you can't, how?
Oh, if you're in a situation now, that's the only caveat that would change my mind on this question. So let's say there was a nuclear holocaust and there's only like 10 people alive on planet Earth, then I would save the 100. Save the embryos.
But so what changed it? Did the worth of the life really change in your mind?
The value changed. Now those embryos are worth more than the toddler, and in the other case, the toddler was worth more than the embryos.
Because the worth of the life did change.
Yeah, because the toddler can feel pain and suffering, is screaming at you, "Save me, save me!" And the embryos are just sitting there on no brains, no hearts, no nothing, no consciousness, just cells with the potential of life.
Right. So yeah, I agree with you. Like even in a scenario where I'm in such a situation, I would obviously pick the child. That's obviously the obvious answer. But
no, hang on. But if that's an obvious answer, then you're just one step away, or the Christian, the theist, is one step away of saying that abortion could be less wrong than bringing a child into certain situations in life. Because you're basically making a value judgment between a toddler and 1,000 embryos and saying, my moral intuitions would be that the toddler is more valuable.
Yeah, sure. So I agree with you. Like I would change this thought experiment with same and put two living humans next to each other. And I'm going to make the same distinction. I'm going to figure out what kind of a life or potential worth would the individual give and select. It need not be a moral choice. I may have made a mistake in my whatever intuition. I'm going to consider a man and a woman. I'm going to think what's going to help me or the world or whatnot. And it may be wrong. But it doesn't make my decision. I guess I wouldn't say it's a good decision that I made.
Yeah, you can say it's a bad decision, but it's less bad than the other one. That's the point of this whole live stream that I did, is to get Christians to admit that abortion's wrong, but it's less wrong than other situations.
So I guess that's where we would change. Going back to this scenario 1 second, if we were going to pick the same situation that you gave me, and I'm going to put an old man and a young child in the room, I'm obviously going to pick the young child. But that does not mean that's the right thing to do. It's just an unfortunate circumstance that I'm in, and I've thought that this is a better idea.
Well, yeah, then you have to define the basis for right and wrong, have a standard of morality, and then see which one comports to that standard. But anyhow, what's your first name?
I didn't give it.
Adam.
No, I didn't give my first name.
Oh, I thought you said Adam. Okay, do you want to give a first name?
Yeah, it's okay. My first name's Mark.
Mark, okay. Just in case we talk again. But I'm going to let you go and open it up for another Christian.
I just need to ask you, if I were to take a scenario where let's say you're trying to save a life, and there's someone, let's say a robber, coming to steal something from someone you love, and you have a gun with you. What's the first thing you're going to do?
Shoot him in the kneecaps. No,
Why not? Why would you rather save him than end him? Like, would you? Is it better for someone to shoot him in the kneecap rather than shoot him in his heart?
if the crime is just stealing, yeah.
You're not sure. It could end up with murder.
Yeah, if I get the impression that either my loved one dies or they die, that's the choice, I would kill that person, yes.
What if shooting in the kneecap would disarm him completely and
Then I would
prevent
shoot him in the kneecap.
But why is that better?
Because they might have a chance to repent of their sins and get better.
So I guess that's what Christians are typically looking at. I think you looked at the Cuba example for what Mike Winger spoke about. And you said, yeah, statistics show that it's a high probability of the child not living a good life.
Yeah.
But that's probabilities. We aren't 100% sure. I think you mentioned that too. That we're
But
not
you
working on certainty.
we do not make decisions in life based on certainty.
Agreed. I agree.
Yeah. So, like, if two people have coitus in a situation where there's tremendous pain and suffering, I do judge those two people as morally bad.
Right. To go back on working on probabilities, you said that we don't work on probabilities. I mean, we don't work on certainties all our life.
Right.
And I agree. Isn't it better to work on a certainty isn't it better to not take that stance of ending a life if there is a certain certainty of it being good?
No, I don't think existence trumps non-existence all the time.
Why is that?
Just because of going back to the probabilities of pain and suffering. Like if a child is born into an unwanted home in a poor part of the world, they will suffer, the probabilities say, and it's better they not exist than exist. Existence is not a virtue. And now this is a fundamental disagreement between me and a lot of theists, especially even some atheists will disagree with me on this one. But I don't see existence in itself as a virtue. Something is not, and it's because of the problem of evil that you can take extreme cases of eternal conscious torment and ask, would you have wished your loved one who's going there never existed? And then for the Christian, I think it's easy to see it and say, yeah, non-existence is better. And
sure, yeah. Like as I think Jesus once mentioned, it's better that he wasn't born rather than what has happened.
And I think this is something Christians really struggle with what I just said.
I mean, I guess there's no harm in trying to think about a lot of things. We still have a lot to figure out. It's not that we are 100% sure on everything. We just know what's, I guess, a revelation to us.
Anyhow, thanks for coming on.
Thank you. Hope to talk to you again.
See you, Mark.
See you.
That was a little painful, a little too long. This guy's nothing but excuses. I guess he's woke. No, eventually he answered each question directly. But the point is, Christians can say that all humans have inherent value because they're made in the image of God. But when it comes down to it, they don't really believe it. They can say it, but they don't believe it. And that's what these thought experiments point out. Because when you truly believe something, you will not always, but often act upon it in a way consistent to your belief. Now, some people are hypocrites and inconsistent and apathetic. But just the fact you would save a service dog before a pedophile or a mass murderer tells you value an animal more than someone created in the image of God. So just being created in the image of God doesn't get you there. In fact, you can read that verse in Genesis that Mike Winger read and say, so what? Any thoughts on the Canadian election yesterday? No, but nothing will get done, right? It was a minority government, which is what the people wanted, I guess. I bet Joseph right now thinks he's getting persecuted for Jesus. Who's Joseph? Am I not seeing certain people on here? Have they blocked me? Last chance for Christians to come in and talk about abortion. I think I scared Christians off when I tell them to look God in the eye and say, you're wrong. Or, so what? I still think it comes down to fear and love. I just love God for saving me. I just got to do everything he says. But some of the things he says is killing as well, so at least in the history. You can still come on if you're a Christian and you're not scared. Hey Frank, what I said about abortion, does that make sense?
Hey man! This makes sense!
What did Cameron Bertuzzi think?
Yeah, that's really bad. That's really, really bad. To me, this was flagrant.
Oh, it was flagrant. Thanks, Charles B. Just remember, abortion rates are plummeting because of technology, education, not because of Christianity. That's my educated guess. You want to decrease abortion rates? Educate kids, show them pictures, telling them that the people are created in the image of God doesn't work. Does not work. Doesn't make a dent. What? I have a question. How do we keep the prophecy of God and live in a world that doesn't have faith for prophecy without hurting our own faith? Are you going to give in to the whims and peer pressure of society, Damian Martinez? No. You're not saying that, are you? Why don't come back to the truth, brother? Come back to the truth, brother! I am convinced, Joseph, that the core propositions of Christianity is false. I believe that if there is a God out there, he will reward, or it will reward, only atheists for seeing through the religions of the world for being faulty. Aliska, you're not a Christian though, right? If you don't believe in God, then nothing to worry about. That's right, Claude. No hell to worry about. The belief in hell supersedes the belief in Jesus. Because if there is no hell, what did Jesus come to save us from? Just ourselves here on planet Earth? Nah. Nice show, Doug. I love that you like a houseplant. What? God will never force himself upon anyone, except for Mary, the mother of Jesus. I hold Christian views on abortion. Okay, that piqued my interest. Okay, Bleach Bit. Aliska, what do you have to say? What do you have to say? Let me turn you up.
Okay. I was just going to say that, at least in the chat, some people are confused about the Texas law. Women are not held responsible at all for abortions or miscarriages or anything else. It's only the surgeon who kills a viable fetus that is held, and they're not even held criminally responsible. They can just be sued for their action. And as far as abortion, I am very much anti-abortion. Another person in the chat brought up the point that I've always wondered about. Well, the sin of Onan was letting his seed fall on the ground. So, I mean, are we mass murderers?
Are you against abortion in every case?
No, I'm a relativist. So, no, there are some cases I can understand. If the woman was forced or coerced or deceived, then I think that she should have the right to do what she wants. I mean, she should force.
And a woman who voluntarily knows about contraception, chooses not to use it, gets pregnant, knows about abortion, voluntarily and understands what abortion is, not deceived, goes in, eyes wide open, gets an abortion. What do you think should happen to her?
Charged with murder, but allow mitigating circumstances to argue a lesser sentence of maybe 5 years instead of life.
What would be the mitigating circumstances?
Low IQ, or just the fact that abortion's been around for so long. You know, that might be a mitigating circumstance.
Ooh, that's interesting. But a high IQ person who's lived in a society where abortion hasn't been around, you would say 5 years at least?
Yeah, well, I would say even for the low IQ person, 5 years. For the person with high IQ, maybe 20 years.
20 years.
And also have them work in...
would you be for the death sentence if they've had multiple abortions?
Well, I would say at the first abortion, the doctor should be required to render the person infertile. And if it was multiple abortions, yes, definitely. I think that does need the death sentence. Just like if 3 or more people get killed by a person, it's pretty much automatic death penalty, at least here in Texas.
Well, you're consistent. I'll give you that much. But to me, what's okay? Let's say imagine a woman who's had 5 abortions, and let's compare it to a man who's killed 5 mothers. Which one's more wrong?
I would say the woman.
Wow.
I mean, she's killing her own children, and the guy, we don't know what reason he would give. I mean, is this Ted Bundy or he just doesn't like their hair color?
Like, you see in the movies where guys stalk housewives or whatever, and then they somehow get in their house, and then they kill them, and have sex with them, and then kill them. You would say it's more wrong for a woman to have 5 abortions than a man to kill 5?
Yes.
See, my moral intuitions are the opposite. I don't know why we're so different, but my moral intuition says it's way worse for the man killing 5 women.
But the man, I mean, if we were going to argue from a philosophical perspective, the guy was doing it for utilitarian reasons. He didn't want to get caught. And
well, I'm just talking about our own personal moral intuitions, and they're just very different. Like, from their perspective, it doesn't matter with their motives. What the end result is, they killed purposely 5 people in each case. Well, what do you answer with the in vitro thought experiment? 1,000 embryos or 1 toddler? Which would you save in a burning building?
One toddler, because actuality tends to outweigh potentiality. But as far as the 5 women, they've experienced at least 20 years of life each. Those children didn't get to experience even a single day outside the womb.
Whoa,
So I would say
I'd see. Right now, I feel you're contradicting yourself.
How?
Because on the one
you're
hand,
saying because they're not yet been born, but that's a different issue.
no, you would say it's less wrong for the man to kill 5 housewives, and it's more wrong for the woman to kill having abortions. Let's say it's early term, but yet you would save the toddler, not the embryos.
There is an apparent contradiction, but yes, I would save the toddler because he is actuality rather than potentiality. Now, if the embryos were implanted into women and we said, "Ooh, we've got some crazy scenario where we can either kill the toddler and let these 8 embryos live, or
but the woman who's had 5 abortions, that's all potentiality as well, not actuality, because they could have miscarriages.
And if she had had a miscarriage, then she wouldn't have committed any crime. But if she goes in and has...
No, she has abortion before the potential miscarriage. It's not...
Before the potential miscarriage.
Yeah.
But that's really our goal. That's kind of like me saying, yeah, I shot the person in the head, but they might have gotten killed by a drunk driver later that night.
But so the embryos on the desk have potential for...
They've not been implanted. That's the key difference. I understand where you're coming from, but that's the key difference to me. They haven't been implanted. If they were implanted and they were growing, then I'd tend more toward that.
So an implanted embryo has more value than an embryo in a petri dish?
Yes, considerably more.
Interesting. And it's because
it's viable. It's already attached itself to the uterus. It's growing. The one on the desk, they may throw out. Don't know if it'll ever be implanted.
Okay, so if an embryo is implanted into a uterus, it has more value than one on a desk. But let's say we have a 2-day embryo implanted. Is it more valuable than a 1-day implanted embryo?
Crazily, yes, it would be.
And a 5-day embryo is more valuable than a 2-day embryo.
Yes.
And so forth.
For quite a while until you get to about 7th month. Yeah.
So value goes up. I tend to agree with you here. Value goes up as time goes up.
Yes.
But it goes back down once you become a 20-year-old or a 30-year-old housewife. Then you reach a peak and then it goes down.
It depends what exactly we're arguing. But
I'm just trying to set how we define. I mean, not how we define value, but what we each like. In a way, I agree with you that value goes up over time, and then it peaks at some point and comes back down.
Right. It would depend upon the individual case with the housewives because if they're in law school and just got their law degree, they may have 30, 40, 50 more years of income and tax, ability. So if we were on a civil jury, we would have to weigh all these out. Okay, this person, their best years are behind them, so their life is worth much less than this person who just finished law school and is going to be paying a bunch of taxes.
Okay. Does pain and suffering enter into the equation at all? For you?
I haven't thought about that, but yes, it does. It would to some extent, but I'd have to go through some argument to figure out how much to weight it.
Like the scenario I gave you with the mass murderer killing 5 housewives. There's a lot of pain and suffering there, right?
Okay. Well, for the women, not necessarily. Now, if you're going to say their families go through pain and suffering.
No. Let's say, like the scenario I gave you was a man goes into a house, stalks them, goes into the house, rapes them, and then kills them. Mm-hmm. The woman knows it's coming. There's at least minutes, if not an hour going by of sheer terror, pain, and suffering. Now, a little baby killed in the womb, let's say before the first trimester, would not experience that, correct?
It wouldn't anticipate the pain, but it would still feel the pain. And then I don't know if I would.
Are you sure about that? When does consciousness, the neural network start?
Well,
the heartbeat starts
you don't
way
have
before
to-
the neural network,
You
right?
don't have to have consciousness to feel pain. They have done studies with the little cameras that they put in that the embryos will pull away from pain in just a few weeks old if you inject acid or do some other stimulus that they
But
dislike.
but that doesn't mean they're experiencing pain.
I would say it does. I mean,
Like if I put detergent on the end of this pen, and then put it in soapy water or dirty water, you can actually see
molecules.
it. These are dead molecules. This is actually a great experiment to show some of the Christians how what looks like life is really just inorganic molecules.
Well,
And you can see, and magnets too. You put opposite poles, magnets will react, but that doesn't mean the magnet's experiencing pain.
Well, the iron filings is a lot different. I would even argue that the molecules are pulling away. I mean, we call them philic or phobic.
Right.
Phobic is fear. So
But you get what I'm saying, though, right? It's
sure. I get what you're saying. But I would say that a living organism, whether it's a plant or a fetus, if it pulls away from something it dislikes, that it's what we would call pain. Now, can I say exactly how they feel? No. I can't go back to that stage of development. But anyway, as far as the anticipation of pain, no, I don't think it really weighs in as far as the women that are killed.
Wow. See, that's where we're different. To me, I would say it's more wrong to say to someone, I'm going to torture you and kill you and start the torturing process than just killing someone instantly.
Well, I would have to agree with the Muslims on that, it's one brief moment in their full life, whereas the baby is going through that tiny little amount, but they've had very little to compare it to. So they have a whole bunch of pain and suffering relative to the duration of their existence.
Oh, you're saying that as a percentage?
Right. The amount of time that the fetus suffers is going to, as far as a percentage of their existence, is going to be way higher than the woman. Now, if we want to take this argument further, how many weeks would the woman have to be raped and tortured in order for it to balance out? Are we just talking about rape, or are we pouring acid on them? Are we crushing her skull slowly?
Do you have children?
No.
Oh, it's too bad.
I can imagine.
I know, it's maybe a good thing. Because if I was to ask this question with your own children, or a loved one, are you married?
Not anymore.
I'm just thinking, think of someone you love, and would you rather, even though it's a small percentage of their entire life, imagine someone going through 1 hour of torture and then death, a knife shoved through the heart or something, or strangulation. And so it's still a very small percentage of their whole life, 1 hour of, let's say, 40 years. And let's say it's the same percentage of their life compared to a fetus, a little baby at the 2-month stage, dying within 10 seconds.
Well, I can get really philosophical and say that pain is just letting you know that you're alive.
The question is, which is worse to you? Which is more wrong?
I think
the 1 hour.
Under my value system, if you gave the person a choice, I can kill you painlessly right now, or I can torture you for an hour and then kill you. I think the greater value would be to live that hour being tortured as opposed to not existing at all. That's where I would disagree with.
No. The options is not existing at all. It's options being tortured for an hour, or just being killed immediately.
Right, and that's what I'm saying. That I think that the person should choose to be tortured so that they can experience that additional hour of being killed outright.
Wow.
And
that's sick.
You haven't been in the military, but that's the kind of stuff that they teach you.
Well,
you
okay,
know,
okay, you got.
pain.
I can understand that if you have hope that you're going to get through it and live. I understand that, but in this scenario, in this hypothetical, you're dead at the end of the hour.
No, in this one also. In the military, you even though you're severely injured, you need to take as many enemy with you as you can before you eventually die. Same thing in the
Well, no, you're not
fire.
killing other people. You're not getting revenge.
Okay,
You're
but
just being
also,
tortured and then killed. You're saying it's better to be tortured for an hour than not be tortured for an hour. That's what you're saying.
it's better to live that additional hour with
Why?
the experience it grants you. Well, if there is an afterlife, maybe you could learn something from it. If there isn't, you really haven't lost anything. I mean,
You've
you're
lost.
alive for an additional hour.
You've got tortured for an hour.
Yes, but sadly, that's life. You know, look at all life on the earth.
You're not being
we're
serious with me,
programmed
are
to
you?
exist. Pardon?
You're not being serious with me right now, are you?
I'm being completely serious.
Okay, truly imagine this. I strap you down to a chair, and for
Mhm.
1 hour, I slowly start cutting things off you.
Yes.
You say
I-
you'd rather do that than me just
Yes.
instantaneously killing you.
Yes.
You rather have your fingers go off first, then your arms, then your legs, your
Saw
testicles.
style.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
you rather experience me cutting you up.
Yes.
You're not serious.
I am totally serious. And with my psychology, you know, that would be an interesting way to die. You know, it's much better than just, you know, going in your sleep. That's something that you
Were
would
you in the
never
mil-
have
you were in the
any other
military?
opportunity. Pardon?
Were you in the military?
Yes.
How old are you?
47.
You're a little too old. I say you should go back. You should ask to be on the front line. It sounds like you're almost suicidal.
No, not at all. Well, I was raised Catholic, and so that does make you a little bit suicidal because we're taught the same thing that the Arabs are. You know, martyrdom is the one way to heaven.
Like,
But,
why not? I mean, pour your gasoline over yourself and light yourself up like that.
No,
you want an experience? There's an experience.
you know, if I was on
My
my deathbed
goodness.
with cancer, then and somebody gave me that as an option, hey, you can have a withering death, or we can pour.
Oh,
gasoline
you're
on-
contradicting yourself
might.
again.
Well, it depends.
Yeah,
This is
yeah.
a one-time experience.
My goodness. When your IQ hits 80, sell. Ugh. He just contradicts himself blatantly right at the end. What's going on here? I'm speechless. I was fairly upbeat until that happened. Yeah, did this guy have his picture taken at Guantanamo? When you think you're clever, but you're not. Yeah, that sums it up. See, this is my COVID test. I don't have COVID because I'd be coughing otherwise.